Welcome back once again. This is episode 71 of Andrewcast, and sorry, our last episode was July 4th, and it was a while ago. During the span of that time, I ended up going to Japan, and it was really cool. Fortunately, I got out of there before the Kyoto Animation Studio bombing, which is unfortunate, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But real quick, before we start the episode, I'm here with the awesome Ed Carr. I met him through a mutual friend of ours, Anthony Michelizzi, who's been on this show a bunch of times. He's also a personal friend of mine. And Ed is a writer, and he's somebody who's a really good conversationalist. I was over at Mick's house, and we got into probably a 3-hour conversation that led us into maybe 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. And so that's always good. And I love to bring people on who are creative and passionate and who also can hold their own talking. But real quick, Sheldon's not here. I think something's happening with the shower head today. It ruptured or whatever. He just texted me being like, "Yeah, man, I'm not even home right now." So he's gonna be out. Hopefully he'll be here for our next episode when we have Jericho on. But Ed, I just want to say thank you so much, man, for being on, and I hope you can make yourself comfortable, and I appreciate you allocating your time.
Yeah,
So.
no problem, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciated the opportunity.
Yeah, man, totally. So real quick, you said that you used to write for work, or do you still do?
I still write for work. Yeah,
Right.
I'm a contract copywriter, so I write for a digital marketing agency and a couple other smaller things I freelance for. So it's mostly advertising, marketing, writing blogs, and different things like that. Nothing too intense though.
Yeah. But you also write music, right?
Yeah, I write music. I've been playing guitar since I was about 12. And piano since maybe 14, and then that kind of slowly became less playing and more writing and things like that. And I don't know how to read or write sheet music or anything like that, but I
Yeah.
write songs and just kind of do things on my own, in my own way, I guess.
Oh, that's a whole nother thing. I have a keyboard in my room, and people ask me "Yo, do you play this? Do you play the piano?" And I'm always like, no. I just look up songs on YouTube. I
Yeah.
look up stuff specifically that I want to play.
Right.
I don't really play the piano. I can't read music either.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we're really living in that age digitally where we don't have to be super trained or anything.
Oh, yeah.
And what's cool is I see your Instagram, and you use your Instagram to show songs that you wrote, you know what I'm
Right.
saying, or little ideas. And that's
Yeah.
what's super cool about just social media and the internet in general is you can learn from the internet and then just show people what you've learned instantly.
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
definitely.
It's really cool.
When I started playing, everything I learned was from a YouTube tutorial or
Right.
from a site called ultimateguitar.com where it has just chords for songs
Yeah.
and the lyrics and stuff like that. So everything I learned was through the internet. If it wasn't for the internet, I'm self-taught for the most
Right.
part with the help of YouTube.
You ever think about dude, people who are guitar music teachers, are they out of business? Do they even do their thing anymore? these people?
I've seen a lot. I mean, at music stores and stuff like that, like a Sam Ash or something, you'll see that they have classes, or someone might have posted on their board that they're doing classes or something like that. You're still always going to have trained musicians. I mean, I think at some point, if you want to master something to a certain level, someone's going to have to help you, like a teacher. You can only Google so much, I think. You can get pretty far, but I think having a teacher is still valuable, just not for me. It was something I did one music class, and I hated it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to be a trained musician. I wanted to play music, and I didn't necessarily have to do it right, because form is important and stuff like that. It's I'll probably have arthritis and crap when I'm older, but in the meantime, I've enjoyed playing much more than if I had to have been trained to do it.
Right. So I always found the same exact thing. Music teachers, it's kind of intimidating when you go in because you have somebody who's so well versed, and they demand that you practice half an hour every day, and they're always asking did you practice half an hour? And you're
Yeah.
especially when you're a kid. You're
Yeah.
I don't know. But I feel in this age that we live in, where all the skills that we're learning are stuff that we've learned and curated on our own.
Mm-hmm.
It's like less pressure, and we can also learn exactly what we want to learn.
Right.
Instead of like going through this whole scope of stuff where I need to learn how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb on like my guitar and stuff, I can go right to what I'm interested in.
Right.
And I feel like people learn better that way. So I'm starting to think like, dude, is teaching going to be obsolete? Like, you know, it's just, I feel like I just asked the same question, but just in general, I feel like we have such a curated path of learning, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I was in school initially to be a teacher. Like that was.
That's what I was gonna ask. You didn't major in writing or anything. Like
I majored in English, and initially I was a double major, education and English, secondary ed and English, and I realized, oh man, I can't be a teacher. Like this is I don't have the patience, and I just realized like this is not for me. Like I don't have it didn't appeal to me anymore because everyone always just said you'd be a good teacher. You know, you're super knowledgeable about like English and history, and you like talking to people and stuff like that, and you're not afraid to be in front of a crowd. You should be a teacher. And I said, all right, cool, I'll be a teacher. And then I was like, I don't want to be a teacher. I said, everyone else wants me to be a teacher.
How late was this in your college career?
I did 2 years, so I guess 4 semesters. It was, I guess, in my junior year when I talked to my teacher was the head of the education department, and I talked to her, and she said, you like the subject, you don't like teaching. And I said, that's very, very astute. Like you hit the nail on the head. And she said, yeah, she said, so stick with, I had enough credits for a minor in education, so I kept that. So that way, if I wanted to go back, I still had those credits, and I could, if I changed my mind. And that was her advice, and thank God for her advice, because I would have wound up probably being miserable. But so like I care a lot about teaching. I think you need teachers in a physical like location, like actually there, because you I think being self-taught in anything is really great, but there's going to be moments where you're struggling or something like that, or even just like having someone to encourage you, I think is really important in a physical sense, where someone's literally there in the room saying good job, or can look you in the eye and say, hey, that's not the way you do it.
Right.
Either way, I think so I don't think teaching is ever really going to be obsolete, but I think it may be streamlined. I think teaching is becoming as streamlined as possible, and with technology and things like that, it's getting easier, I guess, for teachers, but at least I hope so, you know.
Right. You bring a pretty interesting point with the whole criticism aspect of education, where it's like you're not doing this correctly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially because you're in writing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, and there's a lot of people that want to do writing for a living. So like, what would you tell somebody like that? Would you tell them to go seek out a formal education, or like?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Just for corporation work, right?
Yeah. Writing. I'm not Hemingway. I'm not the best writer in the world.
Right.
I'm pretty good at it. I know what I'm doing. But there's a lot of reading that you kind of have to do to be good at writing. It's not just, I can write and that's it. You need to read. You need to understand a lot more than just your own ability. You have to understand what people want to read, and especially in copywriting, that is not just like I write whatever I want. Excuse me. I write for clients, so I need the client's voice in it. There's certain aspects, like if I'm writing an email for a client's email campaign, I want to make sure I'm using their voice, or maybe even doing something a little bit different so that they're getting to a certain audience. And then also just you need specific style things. You need like a call to action. There are something where the reader might click on something. So I definitely think, and now my background wasn't in marketing. My degree is in English.
Yeah.
So I've learned that through other things. But then when it comes down to the process of writing something, you could Google how to use a comma,
Right.
But at the same time, you're like being a writer and being part of like a writing community and seeing what other people write, you can tell when someone maybe doesn't know what they're doing as well, and they can be lazy about it too. So I think a formal education is good, necessary, maybe not. Like there's going to be people who are super just gifted.
Yeah.
But I think an education is definitely going to help you with something that is writing can be super artistic, but it's also such a skilled thing. It's you wouldn't have a sculptor that just goes and bangs on a piece of marble with a hammer. Like they know how to use their stuff.
It's
and
one of
I
those
think
things where
that's
you
it.
look at it, where the untrained eye looks at it,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, oh, that's so easy, dude. Like you just
Yeah.
write the descriptions for Netflix movies. Like
Right.
that's your job. Like that's so easy.
Yeah.
And then it's like, all right, you sit down and you do it, and you
Mm-hmm.
try and sum up. Because if you ever read those Netflix descriptions for like the shows, it's 2 sentences pretty
Yeah.
much that have like the whole concept in there, right?
Yeah, right.
And
You're
you try and
trying
do it,
to
and you're
really
like,
do it,
oh
yeah.
man, this is a little more challenging than I thought it would be. Writing is
Yep.
one of those things. Same thing with, I think, imagery or art.
Yeah,
That people
definitely.
are like, dude, just draw it. Like, just make that picture. It's like, well, that picture took 3 hours to make. You just didn't watch me do it. And I feel
Right.
like writing is probably just like, especially professionally, you probably do multiple drafts and
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of grunt work that people don't really think about when they're trying to go into that field. Because I feel like most people are like, I want to write a book. Like, I'm going to be a writer. And it's like, does it really work that way?
Yeah, and there's, like you were just saying about people say, oh, you can just draw it, but they don't realize the time that you're going in and you're working on a process. And writing isn't just you write, you edit, you rewrite, things like that. Like Hemingway had a good line. I think it's write drunk, edit sober. And because you can kind of
That's cool.
mess around when you're actually doing it, but then you have to get to the real work. The real work is done in editing.
Yeah.
And I mean, like and when you think about like I do a lot of editing at work. Like I've edited client copy that they have sent us. I've edited like contracts and stuff, like our scopes of work, so we send to clients and things for my boss. And being able to notice where you need a comma can be hard, or knowing that that I need to use a semicolon instead of a colon there, stuff like that. And that gets to be, that's work. That's like things that you really have to be paying attention to. And there's that saying, kill your darlings in writing. So if you really love something, you might want to consider taking it out. And so you have to go through something.
What's the logic behind that?
So when you like this, and this is true more of like creative writing, if you have something that you really are like in love with in your story or whatever, don't keep it there strictly because it's something you like. It has to serve a purpose.
Okay.
And that's definitely part of, at least that's my understanding of it. The way that editing really shapes something, shapes a piece of writing, it's insanely necessary, and you don't you don't ever read a first draft of anything. When you're reading a book, it's gone through so many revisions, so
Right.
many different, the editing process is one of the most important processes in writing, whether you're writing copy or grant writing and more like legal writing, things like that, business writing, or if you're writing creatively, if you're writing a novel or a short story, or poetry even, poetry can be a little bit more free because you need less, you don't necessarily need to be as so much of a stickler with grammar, but still you probably should edit your poetry too and make sure it sounds nice or whatever.
Totally. And obviously there's various different styles, and I feel like, again, with the internet, you can kind of make a living off of any one of them. But for you, because you're so passionate about this, what do you consider to be, I'm trying to be careful how I word this question, your favorite book, or like your favorite piece of writing, and then what's the best? Because maybe the best isn't your favorite. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, in your eyes, like, what do you think? Like, a lot of people say, like, oh, Huckleberry Finn or The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, like, that's like one of the best books ever made. Like, in your opinion, what would you say?
So I've already mentioned Ernest Hemingway twice here, and
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
mention
I
him
was
again
gonna
because
say,
he's my favorite. He's my
obviously.
favorite writer. Just because of his style is very unique. His writing, it's really sparse, really just solid. Because he got his start in journalism, so he wrote with that kind of very straightforward style. But at the same time, he's writing superhuman stories. And there's definitely an antiquated quality to him because he's writing in the 20s and then all the way up into the basically the 50s, because I think he died in like maybe 59 or something like that. But so there's an antiquated quality to his stuff. And I think he is one of the best writers of all time. What I say, everything he writes is my favorite thing to read. Not necessarily like I like reading sometimes trashy. Like I read Harry Potter like 7 times.
You'd call that? I feel like a lot of people would call that like pretty good.
Oh no, not Harry. I'm not calling Harry
Oh,
Potter
okay.
trashy, but I've read trashy. Like I've read like stupid books down the shore. Like I just picked up while I was like on the beach or
Dude,
something.
those always. I think you're talking about the ones with like the really convoluted cover and like they're the kind of like these pulp fiction
Yeah,
sort of books. Like
yeah, very
where,
pulpy.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's all like a murder mystery.
exactly.
There's like 1,000 of them. That's so funny that you say at the beach because I'm envisioning right now every bookstore by the beach has those. Like
Oh
their
yeah.
paperback, it's like 300 pages, and you're like, dude, who makes these?
Yeah, I think that'd be a fun job. You write like crappy books for a living. You're just like, it's not
Yeah.
going to be, the New York Times bestseller,
Like
but
what's his face? The guy who made Scientology. I forget his name. Like
L. Ron Hubbard.
there you go. Didn't he write like the most sci-fi stories of all time?
I know I know he was a sci-fi writer. I don't know if I didn't know that statistic,
I
but
gotta look that up. Keep saying what you were saying, man. But like, hold on. L. Ron Hubbard, most sci-fi. Dude, I'm telling you, he wrote like the most science fiction stories out of everything. Who has written the most science fiction books? Oh no, I'm wrong. So it's a writer named Isaac Asimov. He wrote more
okay.
than 400 books on science fiction. Wow.
Did he write I, Robot? I'm not. No, I'm gonna. I hope I didn't tick someone off. Some science
No,
fiction
no.
person
Hold on.
listening, like, oh,
Wow.
Isaac Asimov did not write I, Robot.
I didn't even know iRobot was based off of a book, so now I'm getting. Oh no, he did write it. Wow,
Okay.
that's pretty good, man. Yeah. So wow, he died in April 1992, January 1920. Yeah, but like, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, I didn't even know that was a book. All right, so Hemingway is obviously your favorite, but that doesn't cover your favorite book though? Like, what's your favorite book that you've read?
My favorite book I've ever read is probably Jurassic Park, just
Really?
because I'm a Jurassic Park freak. Yeah, I when I was a little kid, I loved the movie. I watched it hundreds of times. I could recite it to you pretty much beginning to end. And then I found out it was a book. And I was at the library with my mom the one day, and I saw it, and it was they were selling it because the back cover had been ripped off, so it was like 50 cents. I went, oh my God, Jurassic Park is a book, and I read it, and I was like maybe 10 or 12
Yeah.
years old, and that is not a novel for 10 or 12-year-olds.
Really?
Oh yeah, no, it is. It's like it's very dark. Like the movie is very Spielberg. It's very like happy, kind of like happy-go-lucky, not necessarily happy-go-lucky, but a lot more positive
Yeah.
than like in the book, the guy John Hammond, the guy who makes the park and the CEO of the company basically is so awful. And then they make him in the movie a super like happy, charming older man. Like he's this old guy like your grandpa almost. But in the books he's a dick. Like really, yeah.
So the book deals with like more of the darker human issues, I
Oh
guess.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, the book.
See, that's more interesting to me. I feel like that would carry over into a movie pretty good.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's I think a lot of what they're trying to do with the new Jurassic World series.
Oh, okay.
Like they're trying to get more at the darkness,
Yeah.
kind of that is underneath the genetic like cloning craziness and the corporation kind of stuff.
I feel like I guess the intention behind that style of writing is it's supposed to show the humans as being more villainous and scary than perhaps the dinosaurs
Oh
are.
yeah,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, definitely, because it's like his the John Hammond, the guy who creates this, it's his kind of greed and his need to sell and ignore a lot of the advice he's been given from people that this park is dangerous, and he doesn't treat it that way. He treats things just kind of like, it'll be fine. I'll make my money and we'll be all right in the end. So you have a huge difference in the book and the movie, and I love both. But
Yeah.
when I found that book, I got like detention in grade school because I wouldn't stop reading it. I was like recess and the class started and the teacher had to take the book away. It was confiscated. Yeah.
The teacher was straight up talking about presidents.
Yeah.
And you just had That's awesome, man.
Fourth grade. That's
So my only qualm with something like that is, like, obviously because I draw and I'm really into anime and comics and stuff, I feel like stories are mediums with a big visual component. I have a hard time relying on just text because I feel like you take up a lot of real estate in your book describing something visually. And it's cool because you can witness the skill of an author to use vocabulary to describe textures, especially in sci-fi where it's like objects that don't exist in reality. Like I'm trying to think, like War of the Worlds, like H.G. Wells. They go into describing like the creatures and ships, and you're like, all right, cool. Like, it's left to my imagination, but there's so much like here that is just descriptors. I always prefer sort of graphic novels, so it's verbal storytelling, but the complex visual elements are communicated faster because of pictures. I'm guessing you don't care about that at all because obviously, you know, writing, it takes skill to write something that doesn't exist. Dinosaurs too, right? It's like, how do you describe a dinosaur per se, right?
Right. Yeah, especially when the book came out in '89 or whatever it was.
And what was the movie made? 93?
93 it came out, yeah.
That's so interesting.
But I've only ever read one graphic novel, and I loved it. It was called Fun Home, and I had to read it for college. It was an English class, and basically it's about a girl who grows up in a funeral home, and they call it the Fun Home. It's super, visually dark. The story gets kind of dark. Super, super interesting. It's a memoir, so it's based on a true story. It's this woman's kind of life in this very funky environment, and then navigating future problems as she grows and stuff like that with her father and stuff. Pretty interesting book. I actually really loved it. But like my cousin is super into the Walking Dead comics, and I love the Walking Dead TV show, but I've never gotten to like actually sit down and read the comics for whatever reason. It's just never been a medium that I've been particularly interested in. Like, I never read comics when I was younger, superhero comics or anything like that. I always read books. It was just never something I got into. But I like the medium now that I've read the one basically,
right? And
I'd like to read more. But it's just a matter of, like, if I go to the bookstore, I just wind up kind of walking past them and finding something else.
Yeah, I think actually graphic novels are being used a lot to tell personal stories. Like Persepolis, I think, is another one. And then there's Andre the Giant's graphic novel, which is pretty cool. Where
that sounds awesome.
Dude, it was pretty deep. Yeah, I had somebody at my job, she was doing a piece on the book or whatever, and so she brought it into my edit suite for a little bit, and I read it. And it was just, like, amazing, and kind of sad. Like, this guy's life wasn't really what it looked like, I guess, on TV. But, so I think it's cool that graphic novels are actually being made now to tell more reality-based stories where there's not really, like, a lot of superhero elements and stuff, which is I don't know, conversely, what you think it would be used for. But for me, I'm not a big fiction reader because of that reason. Like, I like reading bios. Bios are like my favorite. And then I love like self-improvement books or people who are the authors who are actively participating in the self-improvement that they're plugging. Like those are my favorite. But,
yeah, definitely.
And I think those are the most popular right now.
Yeah,
I'd venture to
like
say.
those kind of life improvement books they're massively popular, and they've been a big thing for a long time. But now you have a lot entrepreneurship has become a massive thing for like people around our age.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of people going to books and things like that to learn how to do anything from running a business to just how to be more confident and stuff like that.
Right.
I think it's really cool. I read a lot of biographies and stuff like that too, though. I love history, so I'm a history.
Yeah.
I read like a lot about like George Washington, Teddy Roosevelt, and stuff like that. And it's definitely like it can be dry reading, and I feel like it bores a lot of people. But and then a lot of people will read a book like that to fall asleep, but I'm like I can't read and fall asleep. I get too into it.
Well, I mean, you also love history too.
Yeah.
My thing is like there are people with lives that are kind of hard to believe. Like one that was very publicized in the past 5 years was the Stronger book, Lauren Hillenbrand, Lou Zamperini. He was that track star that went down the ocean. Like that story is pretty crazy.
Yeah, definitely.
That's one of them. And then another one of my favorite biographies is A Life Stolen by Jaycee Dugard, where it chronicles one of those child kidnappings where they keep their captive in the house.
Oh, wow.
As like one of their surrogate like children. And that was like those books. I'm on the edge of my seat because I'm like, dude, this is like a crazy story. And usually it's only about one chapter of their life. It's like I had a normal life up until this.
Yeah.
And the whole book is about that story.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones that really captivate me. I haven't read any on like historical figures, although I heard that like Ben Franklin's biography, and there's a lot of them. I'm not sure which one to read.
Mm-hmm.
That one's really dope.
Yeah. I mean, he was a super interesting guy.
Yeah.
I've read one of my favorite books that I've read is it's called Washington: A Life by a guy called Ron Chernow.
Dude, I have that on my list to read.
It's really good, and it's really in depth, and you get a really good understanding of Washington, who was a really interesting guy.
Didn't he say like they wanted him to be king originally, and he was no. Wasn't he like, no, I'm not.
Yes,
I'm not doing that.
He could have, he established the precedent of a president only serving 2 terms. He could have ran and kept going and going, but he set this precedent that, he was going to give up power. There's a lot of connections between him and a Roman general called Cincinnatus, who would be called in to fix problems. Like if the Romans were couldn't make a decision, he would come in, rule as a dictator pretty much, and then give the power back to the Senate or whatever. And Washington was compared to him a lot.
Interesting.
And like his whole take on power was also kind of rooted in him wanting to make sure his legacy looked good, and he wanted to look and he wanted people to think he was a good person almost. He thought about his posterity a lot. But he led a really interesting life. Went all over like PA, like as a surveyor. He was a surveyor, so he like lived in the wilderness in PA for a long time, for like in his 20s at some point, and then was a soldier. Was like one of my favorite stories in the book is about he's with an expedition during the French and Indian War with a guy called General Braddock, who was an English general, and their expedition is ambushed by Native Americans and French soldiers.
Yeah. And
Washington has he's just coming off of being sick, and he's leading. He's already said this is a bad idea because we might get ambushed. But now he's leading the guys right in the front lines, and he has two horses shot from underneath of him. He has 5 holes in his coat from bullets. He has his hat shot off or something like that, and he still is just always in the front lines. And then they eventually retreat, but like he was almost killed so many times, and he was just fearless. Like there's stories about him. Like, General Washington in the Revolutionary War, the leader of the friggin' Continental Army on the front lines leading the charge at, I think it was either Trenton or, it might have been Trenton or maybe Princeton or something. I forget which battle or whatever. But, and then him standing while artillery was like falling around him and people saying, General, like, why don't you retreat a little bit so you don't get killed? And he said, what, are you guys scared? Like, and then people were like, all right, so we'll just stand here too. It was pretty he was inspiring to his troops because of that, right. his bravery.
I think you see that in a lot of art of Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's all very kind of Messiah-ish.
Oh, yeah.
And the same thing with Ben Franklin. I took a class called History of Philadelphia. And one of the first things they did was they showed us pictures of Ben Franklin painted of him throughout his life.
Mm-hmm.
And like when he was, younger, like in his 20s, it was kind of more almost school portrait style painting of him. It was like very typical. And then towards the end of his life, he has like one leg up and like a kite and lightning hitting the kite.
Yeah.
And people around him like with wide eyes. And like that's actually like one of the paintings that's on his bios. And I feel like it's the same thing with people back then, historical figures. Like the more they were revered, the more the portrayals of them in art and writing was like very like, yo, like this person is amazing.
Well, it always kind of slightly makes me uncomfortable. I think it's in the Capitol Rotunda in Washington has a it's called the Apotheosis of Washington, and it's like Washington becoming a deity. It's
Really?
a painting of him like rising into the heavens, and it's like pretty, but it's also like yeah, that's kind of weird. Like
no, it totally is.
He's being like this very human man is now godlike in some aspect.
You got to think in an age where people were more, I guess, privy to the Bible and Abrahamic teachings. There's a lot more reverence for authority.
Definitely, yeah.
Definitely, and also like a godlike reverence. And you have to think, not to take anything away from Washington, but I feel like a lot of the reason why those older American heroes were so fearless is because they were so desensitized to death because they're around it so often.
Oh yeah.
Like you got to think like today, I've never seen somebody die in person. I'm very fortunate, God forbid. But like I feel like back then that's all you're seeing, man.
Oh yeah.
And then of course like your self mutilation, like I heard like his teeth were terrible, like it's got to be this attitude of like, dude, whatever. Like, I'm gonna just roll with it.
Well, and that's like, and it's funny you say that about like, us. Like I think as time we've slowly become less exposed to death, and like I've never seen someone die.
But we see fictional portrayals of it all the time. That's the thing.
And there was a thing I was reading about like the difference between like almost like hospice care now, or like a grandparent gets sick and dies in the hospital after spending months in the hospital, whereas before a grandparent got sick and died in the home,
right,
with grandkids and family and everything like that. And so definitely like at that point you saw people get sick and die very, very often. But and then Washington also was like pretty sure he was like on a mission from God or fate or whatever.
I like characters like that though. I love characters like that, even if it's a little misguided. Like I think it's awesome.
Yeah, he definitely had like a bit of a complex with that, where he thought like he was kind of divinely chosen to be in this place, and that he would be protected by some kind of divine right or whatever.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's funny. I could start talking about George Washington for hours because of that book, because I love that book so much. I learned so much from it. But he like anyone that had an interesting life, I find biographies like that are super interesting.
Yeah.
And then like I had a whole class on memoirs in college, and that was specifically like shorter, kind of like you were saying before, like only a small chapter in someone's life, not a full biography. And some of them were so interesting, and just because of so much trauma too. Yeah, like there was
and that's a good way to, I don't mean to cut you off,
no,
but that's a good way to actually like be sane about what happened to you.
Yeah,
is really to write down everything that happened and not censor anything.
Oh yeah, that's, I mean, me, when it comes to things that have happened to me in my life, I always kind of have a dark humor. I always go, that's where I go with things. Like, and it's like, hey, let me make a joke like that maybe might make everybody uncomfortable, but I'm like being honest with it in my own way. And it's like a way I've always approached like trauma and whatever. And me and my sister have made a lot of people uncomfortable by making like pretty, like very, very intense jokes that other people are like, oh my God, like, why did you just say that? Being honest about my traumas. Like, and then, I'm the only person who laughs at it. Everyone else looks at me like, oh, he's nuts, I think. He is definitely insane.
No, I feel like strong people do that. Strong people take something that's obviously meant to be harmful or meant to stop their progress, and they flip it. You know, I feel like if you can joke about something bad that happened to you, then you're a pretty strong person. Granted, there's a lot of bad things that can happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, memoirs are cool, man. I feel. Have you ever read anything twice? Like, was there anything that you loved enough, barring Jurassic Park, that you're like, you know what, I'm gonna read this twice? I can't see myself reading a biopiece twice.
No, when I buy biographies, I always get mad at myself. Like, why didn't I just get this at the library? Because I'll never read it again.
But see, I feel like I'm a bookshelf person.
Yeah.
I'm not a Nook person. So I love having it just to be like, it's on my
Yeah,
wall. It looks nice.
I'm the same. I do the same thing, but I'm always like, there's certain ones where I'm like, I could have just went to the library and got it. I read the Washington biography twice.
Wow.
Once because it was for school, and that's when I've just like liked it so much, and I was like, oh, let me just go back again now that I know I have, you can read a little bit more in depth into it and like make notes of things that might have been smaller that you missed or whatever. But I read a lot of things over again, especially if they remind me of a certain time and place. Like music will remind you of a certain place, certain time or a feeling. And I'll do that with books too. Like, in the summertime, I always like to read another one of my favorite writers, Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It's such an absurd, fun read. And like, sitting outside in the heat and with, a couple of drinks and reading about, him and his debauchery in Las Vegas is really fun. And then the other one I read at least once a year is The Exorcist.
You read that once a year?
Yeah, around Halloween time. I read because it's a book that I wind up killing in like a day.
Really?
So like on a Sunday when I have nothing to do. Yeah, it's a really well written book. Some really like beautiful writing in it, despite the absolute like terror of it. Like that's right. I'm not the kind of person that gets freaked out like by movies and books and things very easily, like horror. I love horror, but I don't get scared very easily. There was a scene in The Exorcist that I read it and I got like chills and just like
in the book.
I got genuinely creeped out
through writing.
Yes,
that's
and that had never happened to me before, and so I love that book. I love the story. I love the writing. And so I usually read that at least once a year. Probably a couple others I've gone back to once or twice. I also do a lot where I'll start it and then not finish it. Like I'll get because I've already read it and it's like, okay, I kind of got what I wanted out of it, and then let me read something new, or like because I have so many books on my bookshelf that I haven't read yet.
I feel guilty about that too. Like I'm reading something I love and I'm like, dude, like I should be reading something else. But do you remember? I'm just so curious, and I don't want you to butcher it because I know like reciting it's probably not as good as reading it.
Yeah.
But do you remember like what that scene was that got you?
Oh yeah, it's and it was in the movie, but they cut it.
Oh really?
Yeah, it didn't like if you watch like the director's cut or whatever, like William Peter Blatty, the director of the movie, decided to take this scene out, and the author's name is eluding me right now.
That's cool. I'll look it up.
But either way, it's a scene where Regan, the girl who is possessed.
It says Peter Blatty was the writer.
Oh, he's the writer?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Let me just check director real quick. I feel like I'm gonna know the director right away. William Friedkin.
Friedkin. Yeah. Okay, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, William Peter Blatty was the writer. So in the scene, Regan's like babysitter, or I guess it's her babysitter, is walking down the steps after like just checking on Regan, who is asleep, and because they think she's sick, and they haven't gone to the religious, they haven't made that move, and so they're just kind of nursing her and stuff like that, and I think she's asleep, and then the babysitter is walking down the stairs, and Chris, the mom, looks up the stairs and sees Regan spider walking like behind the babysitter, who has no idea she's there, and her tongue's out like licking at the heels. I just got chills talking about it because like just imagining walking down the steps not knowing there's little girl bent over backwards spider walking while like her tongue is flicking in and out of her mouth, and it scared the crap out of me when I read it. Yeah.
That is interesting. Yeah, that was in the movie. Dude, I heard that the actress in that movie got like super messed up after
She
that
she
role.
was little too. She was not
Yeah.
little. She was like maybe 14 or something when that movie came out. But there was a lot of weird crap that happened on the set of that movie apparently. And
Yeah.
one of my favorite things is the fact that the guy Max von Sydow, who played the old priest in that, is he was only like 27 or something like that, and they did makeup to make him old, and now he's actually like the age he played in the movie, and like he's in things now, and he looks almost identical to what he did in The Exorcist. That came out like 69 or whatever it was.
Dang, man.
That's one of my favorite like little Hollywood factoids.
Yeah, it's kind of like that little face filter thing that's going around.
Oh
I'm sure if
yeah,
you did
that's nuts. That is weird as
Dude,
hell
it's pretty
doing
crazy
it.
that that's even like able to happen, man.
Oh yeah, that's no. I know there's a lot of privacy like worries and concerns about it. But I did it, and I when the I with my beard, I had a beard when I took the one, and I didn't look almost any different. I just had a white beard because I look very old, and your listeners aren't going to get that unless I tell them. But
You don't look old, man.
well, to a certain extent, I guess I do because the face app didn't change much. It just gave me a white beard. And then the other one I did where it was an older picture where I was clean shaven and I looked almost identical to my grandpa. Like, and I
Yeah.
sent it to family members, and they were like, "This is making me uncomfortable because you look so much like Pop."
Yeah,
So
it's
it was
weird,
weird.
how it takes your features and accentuates them, and then they said that you should do like the old face filter, save that picture, and then do it again.
Yeah.
And make it even
And then you look
crazier.
really old. Yeah, one of my friends at work did that, and they were talking like, and so they just kept doing it and doing it and doing it to the point like it just you just
Wrinkly
yeah,
mess.
you look like crap basically.
Dude, to everybody that's like, oh man, like don't download it because like the Russian people have your picture. Like, dude, your picture's been taken by,
Oh, yeah.
like 600 sources by now,
Right,
man.
and
You're,
yeah.
you're screwed if you're really trying to stay off the grid. You're done. If you have a smartphone and you have a credit card, it's over for you.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. And I mean, like, the people are like, oh, because Russia is the boogeyman too right now.
Oh, for
That's
sure,
Russia
yeah.
is we're like back in the 80s where every bad guy is Russian.
Yeah.
And the people who were freaking out about the company being Russian are totally fine with all the photos they have on Facebook and
Right.
and stuff like that. Like it's
And Instagram.
yeah,
all that, man.
it can't. I mean, I don't know what I understand that like when you use the app, like they have in perpetuity can always use your image after that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, well, I'm never going to be an important enough person where I'm going to have to worry that, oh my God, Russians have my selfie. Like, what am I going to
No,
do? They have
no.
my selfie, you know?
Think about how many accounts that you have that like, because nowadays, man, just to do what you got to do for like plane tickets and concerts and stuff, you got to have at least like 12 different accounts. Think about how many times that you hit read terms of service and you did not read it.
Right. Oh, yeah.
You're done.
It's
You're done.
like, yeah.
It's over. Just the fact that you did that, you're done.
Yeah,
They already
like-
have your information. They have your picture. They have everything, bro. And that was all there. You just
Oh,
you
yeah.
clicked read.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
You know, that's my attitude on that. And people they I think they underestimate. Now I know this was a joke, but it was going around. You obviously saw it, but like the whole Area 51 thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know how like that started? Like, do you know the whole story?
What I had read was a kid did just a Facebook group
Yeah.
and it blew up, and then it became he just did it after seeing a show like about aliens or
It
something
was
like
the
that.
Bob Lazar documentary, which is on Netflix, and you might want to check it out because like that's kind of what shot this thing into virality.
Right.
Joe Rogan had Bob Lazar on the podcast along with the filmmaker who made that documentary to kind of advertise for it, and it's pretty interesting stuff. Do I believe it? We'll get into that in a second, but like what happened was the guy who made the survey on Facebook watched that.
Mm-hmm.
Then he made this whole page like, yo, storm Area 51, they can't stop all of us. I think the quote was, if we Naruto run fast enough, their bullets won't hit us. It was
Yeah.
just obviously funny. So an Air Force official gets on NPR and they say, we strongly advise any sort of illegal entry into Area 51. And people are like, whoa, like, is that like some sort of threat? And then it cut, there was a video response to this on the news, and it shows that like pretty much the surrounding area of Area 51 is all used for like weapons testing.
Yeah.
So like there's planes flying by in the desert, just dropping bombs and blowing up like these huge masses of desert. And it's more like, I don't think the hiding thing is such a big deal, more than the fact that if you're walking around out there, you could get just blown up.
Definitely.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and obviously it's a joke, but I just think it's so funny that people are like, there's something hidden there, and just walking there you would get blown up probably.
one of my favorite things about this, the memes are hilarious.
Dude,
I'm
so
like,
funny.
I haven't laughed this hard in a while, but I love the memes. But one of my favorite things is the guy who made the Facebook account has actually been contacted by they want to do like a concert or something like that. So they've used it to market. They're like turning it into a marketing opportunity for this concert. And so instead of having, a million people storm Area 51 and you want to attend this event that they have, a certain band or whatever is playing, I forget exactly what it is, but they've used this Facebook group to actually turn it into an event where they'll sell tickets and stuff like that. And it's good marketing.
The Nevada Music Festival or something like that?
Might be. I'm not totally sure I don't remember exactly what it was, but I'm also curious to see how many people might show up still to Area 51.
I think so, man. It's, if that kid sells T-shirts, I'm sure he'll be a billionaire.
Oh,
yeah. All he has to do is put like Storm Area 51 in white text on a black shirt, and he'll make $500,000. Like, it's crazy how something like that falls into someone's hands.
Oh yeah.
Just like as a joke, like you could have easily made that.
Oh yeah.
If you were like some sort of like geek.
Well, isn't that the funny thing about going viral? Like you could be a nobody and you make one tweet or you have one Instagram post or something like that blows up, and now you're pretty much maybe it's only a flash in the pan, but you're famous. Pretty much,
you have people's attention if you have more to offer.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
The cool thing. Like if you have anything beyond that, then you have an audience of 1 million people that are ready to eat it up. But back to the aliens thing, man. So I'm just gonna get you up to speed real quick because I'd be interested. Because you're so, versed in history, I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. So this guy, Bob Lazar, pretty much says that I think in the late 80s, early 90s, he gets brought to Area 51. He's a space engineer. I'm probably going to butcher some of the details, but he's like an aerospace engineer. And they bring him in to work on this this engine that is run essentially off of gravity. And, that's impossible from what we can accomplish. And apparently, it's pretty dangerous to work with. The previous two people were trying to find out how this gravity machine worked to propel this object around, and they got killed in the process. Like, he gets brought on to work on it, and then, long story short, they they are trying to make sure that he's like stable enough to work on a project so secret. So they have like people who are investigating his home life and private life, and they find out that his wife is having an affair. So they let him go because they feel that if he realizes what's going on between him and his wife, he's going to become emotionally unstable. It's pretty complicated. But like, long story short, he's saying that like they've been hiding stuff in Area 51 like since the 50s. Here's my thing, like, UFOs are real, but like you have to really look at like what unidentified flying objects are. They're not necessarily extraterrestrial. They can be like a Russian military thing that's just being tested, right? But do you think that the American government would be capable of like making something like that secret, like through, I keep saying but through generations of government leadership? Do you think that the passing of the torch would be able to keep something secret like that? I don't think so. Like, that's my one thing. It's like, I don't think a secret that America has in the 50s can be held all the way until 2019.
I think it's a really good point. I honestly don't know. I mean, like, do I think they could keep a secret that long? Yes. Do I think they could continue to keep it now where we are as a society? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess because the other thing is as there was a point where the government could ask the media, oh, don't say this, and the media would say, oh yeah, cool, no big deal. It wasn't necessarily censorship, but like you would get,
it was moderated.
Yeah, like FDR being in his wheelchair and stuff. He was never photographed in the wheelchair.
That's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah,
it was always waist up.
Yeah,
right?
and it was, and they they had all of these methods for making sure that like photographers didn't take pictures of him this way, and the photographers were okay with it. They said, yeah, no, we won't put any kind of news out there about this. So,
I also think that was a more patriotic time.
Oh yeah,
People were
definitely.
more loyal to their country.
Oh, without a doubt.
And then more sincere.
And I mean, now you have like any kind of little thing is going to be exposed.
For sure. Especially with this president, like people are all too eager to just like come in his hands and everything.
oh god, yeah, like literally anything he does is like scrutinized to the nth level, and then it's like, yeah, look at what he did. He's an awful person because his hands are tiny. It's kind of silly, but whatever. But with the alien thing, I could see how they could maybe keep things secret for a pretty long time, and I mean, there's a lot of people involved too, and you'd have to figure at some point it'd be more than just like one or two people saying something.
Defectors,
yeah, and I mean,
I've escaped.
And like I have a certain like distrust of any kind of like person saying I worked on this, I did this thing, and I'm the only person who knows, and like it's like eyewitness accounts, that kind of thing. There's only so much credibility you can give that, and it's always like it's always like a certain kind of person. It's always like some guy that like seems just a little bit off, and it's like it's hard to trust someone who's saying that. Right. I think I don't know. I haven't seen this guy necessarily.
I don't even know if this is an interesting topic to you, but like. Conspiracy theorists would argue, and I'm not one of them, but I'm just saying to play devil's advocate that those people are allowed to go back into the American public and talk about their experience because everyone would see them as ridiculous, as somebody who's being eccentric.
It's subterfuge. I mean, like it makes sense. It could work. I mean, my whole thing is I don't think that makes sense from a resources standpoint. Like, okay, this is way too much work to cover this thing up. And I mean, and what would be the purpose of keeping it secret? That
that's the big thing. What would be gained? But see, everybody's response is like, dude, mass panic. And I'm like, would there really be mass panic? There would be people that do stupid stuff for sure.
Yeah.
But like, I wouldn't. 90% of the people I know wouldn't panic. We'd be in awe. We'd be like, wow, like this is crazy.
Yeah.
We'd probably look at ourselves different in the mirror, but like the world wouldn't explode.
Right. Yeah. I mean. Like, so we've lived with aliens our entire lives. Like, oh, okay. It's what changed?
It'd be big, but you still have to go to work. Like,
yeah, exactly.
No one's gonna be like, I'm calling out. It's like, what? Like, aliens exist, dude. I don't have to make burgers anymore. Like, are people really gonna do that? I feel like we overestimate the reaction.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Is that something personally that matters to you? Like, do you even care about like, are we alone in the universe? Like, do you even have a stance on that?
I think it's a super cool thing to think about. I think it's great for a conversation. I like it that way. Is it's something that I'm like particularly going to be like researching and staying up wee hours of the morning trying to find proof. No. It's just not. It's not. Would I care if aliens existed? It'd be like, oh, that's cool. Like, I wonder what they look like. I wonder what they do. Like, but I wouldn't be like, like, what? The only worry, I guess, would be like, what would, if they've been here, what were their intentions? Obviously, it must not have been much because I guess we'd have known about it if they did have some kind of crazy intentions, but. It's not something I worry about or think about too often, unless it's brought up in a conversation. Then it is a fun thing to think about, but otherwise, it's not something I'm particularly. You don't strike me
as one of those people. Like I know conspiracy theorist type people, and I feel like they find it to be like some form of escape, just like maybe you'd find reading Jurassic Park or The Exorcist to be some form of escape, where it's like, dude, like this is real, and like they pump themselves up and they believe it so much, and it's like. It just becomes a part of them almost.
Well, it's life isn't as boring as it is.
Right.
That's the whole. It's wanting to live in a book or a movie. It's like oh, I'm the only person who knows this.
Exactly.
And I understand that. Like you said, it's an escape. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't see the purpose. do I trust everything I've ever read from, the government or whatever, or something like that? No, maybe not necessarily, but I'm also a skeptic, I guess, for most things that I can't, necessarily see or touch or whatever. But I kind of float in the middle ground, I guess, is a better way to think of it.
I got you.
You know?
My thing is like, anybody who has all the answers, like if I ask you a question about like why the earth is flat or like why aliens exist and you have an answer for everything, I don't trust you. Like,
Yeah.
there has to be at least 4 questions in where you go, I don't know.
Yeah.
And if you say that, I'm be like, all right, maybe this person has a stance on things, but if you have an answer for everything, I'm like, dude, there's no way. Like,
Right.
Most reasonable people, when they argue anything like this that's existential, most of it is like, I don't know, but I believe,
Right.
And that stuff is pretty cool to me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I can't imagine having a conversation with someone. It's like, well, what do they look like?
Mm-hmm.
What do aliens look like? And it's like, well, and then they have great legs.
Exactly.
It's like their fingernails are
Yeah.
always cut super short. Like, and like that kind of thing would totally creep me out if someone's saying that, like, instead of saying, I don't know, I never saw them, but I think they exist.
Right.
That would be the most normal response, right, to
Right.
that question. I'd hope, at least, but
And that's my problem with all the abduction stories. It's like, I was in my bed, and then I sat up, and there was like 6 little people in my room, and they were gray, and they had black eyes, and it's just like, you gotta start the question, like, all right, but then somebody else had an abduction story where they were like tall and they were made out of metal. So like,
Right.
what's going on here? I don't know, but I find it interesting that has like there's a resurgence of that. And it's funny because I was watching the news, and all those little businesses in Area 51 are like gearing up, like all
Oh,
these
yeah.
local restaurants and stuff. They're just like, dude, it's been crazy. Like, people have been coming through.
Yeah, you have influencers that are going to be going to Area 51 to take a selfie and be like, oh, I made it.
Right.
You're literally going to have it's the fact that it's become a cultural thing, and I mean, it'll be something that people are like recapping in 2020. Like, oh, this was part of 2019, was the Area 51 raid.
Exactly. I think about that too. Just to get back to writing real quick.
Sure.
Your what would be like your main ambition or something that you want to accomplish with writing?
Like career wise, like goal wise, or just
I don't know. Like, do you have a writing associated dream or
um
like that?
yeah, I have a few. I mean, like, and also because of the different way that my different I guess genres or whatever where I'm writing, like, because I write a lot of poetry. I write like short stories and stuff like that. I write songs, and then I write copy for work. So, like, I guess I kind of would have a different goal for each of those things. With more creative writing, the goal is to make something that one kind of takes my feelings on an issue or just about a thing, and puts them in a kind of lets me experience it again, and kind of think about things in a different way. And then, like music and poetry, a lot of that is just me thinking about a subject, feeling just kind of things, are just written down, and then I go back and tweak it so it sounds pretty or whatever. And then with like copywriting, though, that's more of like, oh, I'd love to, I'd like to be more and less marketing, more advertising, and write, like commercials or something like that, and or something along those lines. That's a little bit more tangible. But then, of course, like if I wrote a novel, I'd love to be a best-selling novelist. That'd be really fun. Songwriter, I'd love to just have people, liking what I'm doing. That would be cool, and getting, people to feel something. That's kind of the goal of any artist, right? You want to be able to make someone feel a certain way and experience your art, and the little part of life that you're trying to portray in these couple of words or an image or whatever it is.
Well, anything good that's worth consuming elicits some sort of emotion from you. For example, I mean, you were just talking about Exorcist, like that elicited fear. That's why it's so good for you. But yeah, what I'm getting is that you don't necessarily have like one direction that you're looking at. It's just like a whole bunch of avenues that you're trying to do your best in every single.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, like, and it's also it's the you know, like, trying to be a famous novelist is not something that's necessarily super tangible and oh, I can just do this, you know. I could take a chance and try and do things, but like, you know, I kind of separate the two things as like career and passion, you know.
Cool.
And I try to keep that, you know, because you have to pay the bills there, you know, and I'm lucky enough to be able to do something that is as cool as writing for a living and make money, you know, that way with copywriting. Yeah. And of course, yeah, sometimes it's boring. Sometimes it's I'm writing some email content that I'm just like, oh, this is a bummer. Like, this is, you know, this is awful. And then there are times I'm like, oh, this is really fun. I'm getting to play around with words and create something that, you know, it's the same thing. I want to sell a product. I want to elicit emotion. And I love good advertising when it makes you feel something, and it's not just necessarily here's my product, buy it, but
it's gotta be creative. I love the recent one. I forget what it is. I think it's an insurance company, and so the premise of the commercial is that the people who pick the competitor's insurance company, they don't get anything with their enrollment in this insurance, but like that nothingness that they get is embodied by somebody named Bubkiss. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't think I've seen that one.
Yeah, I just got Bubkiss, and it's just like a dude named Bubkiss, or another word for nothing, you know, like it's a dude, like just like some useless guy like in their driveway, and I thought that was so creative that somebody had to write that, you know.
Yeah, that's the coolest thing about good advertising is someone did write it. Someone came up with this idea. I love that.
Yeah, Geico I think probably has the best ones. But that's cool. So, I mean, you're young too, and you're working to get into a writing field that is more creative, that allows you to be creative and not just like so, I guess, logistical.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, cool. I mean, because that's when you have an English degree, you know, you have you have a lot of options, but you're also limited. So like you can go into legal writing or something like that, and that I couldn't do that.
It takes a special type of person, man.
Yeah, I mean, like there's only so much, you know, like, and then grant writing was something I considered, because even that, like, that would kind of get old pretty quick.
Yeah, you play music, man. You're less analytical and more.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But you have to be so analytical for that.
Yeah.
Which leads me into my follow-up question. Because you do all this writing for fun and for work, do you journal? Like, do you keep like a journal?
It's funny. I never kept a journal. I have notebooks. I have hundreds of notebooks filled with just ideas and things like that, but I never actually journaled until I guess the beginning of last year. My sister had bought me a little like leather bound book, and I said, like, I'll turn this into a journal. So I started keeping track of like every day almost, or like I'd go and try to like keep track of, like, maybe I'd skip it for a week and then try to recap highlights of my week or whatever. And then that journal I threw away because I felt like it was cursed at some point, because everything I was writing about was like, oh my God, I had a crappy week. I was like I'm not writing in this journal anymore. And I had a story idea. I was like, that'd be a fun story to write. Like, as he's writing in the journal, his life gets crappier and crappier and crappier. But it was given with him.
It was given to him with the intention that it would help him. Actually,
exactly.
But it makes things worse.
But now I don't do it I do it somewhat habitually. But like my journal, I do a lot of poetry in it. Cool. And that's because poetry, when I write that, it's more just like an immediate expression, thinking about something. But then I very rarely am like sitting and like agonizing over a line of poetry. I'm just writing the first kind of things that are coming to my head.
Right.
But that's part of the journaling of, you know, and then sometimes I'll recap a certain part of my week, or some days I'll do it 3 days in a row if something happened that I want to write about, or just try to even get my own thoughts like on something straight.
Tangible, yeah.
Yeah, and then I keep lists of things like books I've read this year,
That's cool.
places I want to go.
Yeah, I love lists.
Yeah,
They're
it's
so satisfying.
yeah, it's something about like just it kind of you turn off your brain a little bit, and
Yeah.
you don't have to think too hard about like, oh, I want to travel to 10 places before I'm 30, and then you write down those 10 places you want to go.
Yeah.
And it's been valuable, more valuable than I thought it would be. Like I was like, oh, I don't need to necessarily journal, but then there's so much out there that recommends it for creative people, for people with like I guess like anxiety issues and stuff like that. Even
That's what I was going to shift into, is like, because we talked about the expressive and like the artistic and professional value of writing, but like the power, the empowerment element of writing, I guess.
Yeah.
For me, man, like when I'm experiencing some angst, dude, I write down everything I'm feeling and exactly what it is, like about the whole thing, and it helps, man, like so much to get it out. Because I mean, you could say that to somebody, and you should have somebody in your life that you can talk to honestly and like really unload if you need to. But man, like writing it out and then reading it back, it may sound super negative like when it's on paper, but you actually get like what you're thinking in such a clear and tangible way that you're like, okay, based off of this perception, like I can make a decision, and that's super helped me out, man. It's tough staying consistent. Like that's one thing, is like, I'm gonna write every day, and then before you know it, you're like, oh dude, like I didn't have a chance to write today. So my thing is the whole list thing, right, where you're like, I'm gonna visit these places before I turn 30. That's the most powerful aspect of writing, is the goal part. Like I'm going to do this, or I'm going to be this, or these are things I'm gonna get done. I feel like when you write it, you're almost like spellbound to get it done, dude. I've used that as like, I guess, like a little life hack cheat in my life so many times, where it's like I got a ton of stuff to get done, and as soon as you write down what you're gonna do and when you're gonna do it, it evens things out so much. And people don't do it. There's so many people that don't like do that, and I feel like that's such an elementary step.
Well, and thinking about it, it's the first step in making something real, right?
Exactly.
Like you're literally taking this thought and
head,
putting it physically somewhere, and there it is, and you can go back and look. I just I am a very, very I don't want to say limit. I guess I'm somewhat limited. I've never left my little corner of the world for the most part. I've very rarely been out of PA. I've never really traveled on my own.
Yeah.
And
would you say that you're like more introverted, kind of like I'm guessing your room is probably super comfortable,
Yeah,
you have it
exactly.
to you.
I have
Exactly.
yeah,
I'm
my
the same way, man. I'm the
my
same
bedroom
way.
is like everything that makes me happy.
Yep. Same.
And but I want to get out and see more of the world, and so that's always been my thing. And I love Anthony Bourdain is one of my personal heroes.
Awesome guy.
And getting his method of kind of getting out into the world and seeing people, and it was so kind of enlightening for me. And I love cooking, and I love exotic cuisines, that would be exotic to me, but it's someone's home cooking. Like I love that kind of stuff. And so this year I had the goal of like, I need to make myself go places. I need to get out of my bubble. And the first one was a family trip to Nashville, which was fun, but it's still like I'm with my family. And then the other one was last weekend I went to New York City.
Cool.
And it started off of like
Is this your first time?
I've been there before, but this is the first time by myself.
Okay.
And both times I went there, it was not exactly seeing things I wanted to see or do things I wanted to do. It was about kind of like basically it was crap the one time, and then not as bad the other time. But this time I was on my own. I saw things I wanted to see. I hung out with a friend.
Nice.
It was really like a great trip and an awakening for me in a lot of ways. But it started off thinking about it in March and then writing it down in the journal. Like, I'm thinking about this trip. And then that, like, it became tangible. It became a thing. Like, okay, well, let me figure out money for it. And now it's like, okay. And now that it all, the process, the wheel starts spinning. And it all starts with me just saying, this year I'd like to do more things, and writing this down or whatever way I wrote it. And then figuring it out and doing it, and then it's execution. Then it's you're executing on this plan you've made. And it was like, oh, I can do this. And it all started with writing it down, and it was really cool, you know.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I have that in my journal. You know, I recapped almost the entire thing in my journal. Like I went back and wrote down almost every kind of step of the trip.
Yeah.
To remember it for myself, and to kind of give myself also a little bit more momentum going forward to do more like that, you know.
It's also powerful, man. Like 5 years from now, you pick that up and you read it.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna relive that moment like very vividly.
Uh-huh.
Man, like again, I've written. I don't know why I can't talk right now. I've written many stressful situations in my life down on paper, and when I pick them up and read them years later, I'm just like, wow, like I relive that same energy, but it also gives me perspective. Like there I was, and it's gonna be cool because when you finally travel and like make it far out to where you want to go,
right,
you're gonna revisit that and be like, wow, like there was a day where I just wanted to go to New York. Like it was it was super simple. Like I just had to get on a train. Like I budgeted for it. And like, dang, like this year I just got back from Bolivia or wherever you're gonna go.
Right.
So
yeah.
It's cool to have that like for records.
Definitely.
I use the podcast as kind of the same thing, man. Like I've been doing this now since late 2016, and it's crazy. Like the first episode I listened to, my life was so different, and there were so many things that version of myself didn't know. Right. And so I kind of see this as like a form of journaling as well. But I feel like what you're saying is so true, where it doesn't have to be anything big. Like you could have wrote like, oh, my goal is to go to China, but like you started small, and once you do the small thing, like you get something really small done, there's so much momentum behind that.
Oh yeah,
you do
definitely.
Another small thing.
And that was that. I mean, the fear of being on my own in a place, and that was, I have a friend who lives there, who I was going to meet, and so like that made it a lot easier.
Of course.
You know, like knowing that there was a little bit of a lifeline out there somewhere. Right. But being on my own, like walking around, I was like, man, like I was confident. I felt good. I was like, this isn't as scary as it seemed. No. And then I definitely I want to keep that momentum going. But I also like what you're saying about like looking back on your what you've written and with your new perspective. And it's like you think about like any kind of like, you know, creative endeavor that you're doing, and like for me, when it comes to like listening to songs I wrote when I was like in high school, and I'm singing about some heartbreak in high school or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's now I look back on it and I'm like, oh my God, like that's so stupid. Like why? Yeah.
You thought the world was over.
Oh yeah.
You didn't even know that you were gonna live another 10 years. Like,
exactly.
That
yeah.
wasn't in your head.
You're not thinking about that. Yeah. And now you go back and look at it, and then like I was saying, the journal I started in 2018. Where everything was just like negative, and now I look back on it and I'm like, you know, it's 2019 has been a lot more positive, and I'm like, okay, like that sucked, and I can go back and look at it, but like, and there's like moments where I'm like, oh my God, this is like terrible, and I'm like, well, it wasn't as bad as it seemed then, and I made it through, and that's another cool thing is like you can, you know, it's almost a lesson in perseverance for yourself. It's pretty cool.
That's what I was gonna get to. We're in deep talk right now, but like, I feel that is the secret to happiness, is constant improvement. So that's why it's important to keep a record of where you've been.
Oh yeah.
So that you know that today or this year or this week, you're further than you were back then. Like that idea of progression, that feeling of progression is what, in my opinion, is what's going to make you happy.
Oh, definitely.
Because dude, like, you know, no one ever wants their effort to be in vain. That's why you have to record it, man. So my question to you is not to like hold you to some big agenda, but if you could go anywhere, where would you want to go?
There's a lot of places I want to go.
Yeah.
I feel
like England would be
really cool.
For you.
England would be really cool. There's definitely a lot I want to see in England, and like, you know, my ancestry is Irish, so I want to see Ireland, and Germany for the same reason. But I also, I really want to go to Italy at some point, because I took Italian in high school, and like I really like the idea of culture there and stuff like that. I want to go to somewhere in Asia at some point, because it's very different for me. That would be, you know, really out of my comfort zone. Mexico and South America and stuff like that, just because, like I said before, I love to cook, and one of the cuisines I love the most is like Mexican, like traditional Mexican, not Taco Bell, you know. I love that, so that's a reason I want to go there. In the U.S., there's so many places I want to see because of either historic things, or like I want to go to Hawaii because they filmed Jurassic Park there. Like I want to see
Did they really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
on Kauai, and a lot of it in a national park, I think it is. I forget the name of the park, but like you can see the waterfall and all that, where the helicopter flies down and stuff.
Dude, that's pretty sick. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I have so many places I'd love to be that, you know, a person who travels to some foreign place at least once a year or something like that. It's expensive, and so as soon as I can do that, that's my goal.
Man, it is expensive, but the whole once a year thing, it's feasible. Like I feel like you can do it, and you should. Like it's really, really worth it. Not that I'm Mr. Travel. I've been a lot of places, and admittedly, a lot of them is just because I'm very privileged and my family's taking me places. But like, I did an international trip, just like I mentioned, like 2 weeks ago. That was completely funded by me, and it was a lot. But like, I saved and I planned accordingly. I was planning since Christmas, and I just got it done. My thing is like, if you're young and you're listening to this. Not that I'm in any place to give advice to young people, but dude, you're supposed to travel. So, man, like I'm just encouraging you, bro. Do that. Just think of one place and just go, man.
Well,
you can go by yourself, dude. I know it's gonna be scary, like you were scared in New York, but there's nothing like being in a foreign country like on your own by yourself, man. It makes you feel so. You feel like a character in a book.
Yeah. Well, that's how I felt. That was coming off the subway in New York, and I walked out and I started smiling, like ear to ear smile.
Yeah, you're free.
Because I'm outside of my comfort zone. I'm in a place I'm really not familiar with, but I'm on an adventure. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
man.
it's the beginning of like it was the beginning of the trip, and I was just so excited, and you know, seeing things and doing things that I would never have normally done. Like, and it was exhilarating. It was fun. It was, and like you were saying about traveling while you're young. And I've advised people that forever, and I'm not a traveler. I've always been like, if you have the opportunity though, go like study abroad programs and stuff like that. When I've had friends like, oh, I'm considering doing study abroad, I'm like, do it. Like definitely go for it. And a lot of time it's like, well, they wind up not doing it. But I've always given other people the advice, you know, and I've never actually acted on it myself.
Yeah.
But definitely, and living like now, the world is a little bit bigger for me, and you know, I've grown as a person in the last week from this little trip, and now I'm looking forward to growing more. And while I have the time and the energy and things like that, I want to do so much more that, you know, and not just sit in my little bubble in my comfortable room and be Bilbo Baggins. You know, I don't want to be Bilbo at the beginning of the book. I want to be Bilbo at the end of the book.
Well, totally, man. I mean, for me, because I'm such a visual guy, movie guy, in the beginning of Dark Knight Rises, you know, Batman he's been in his house for like 3 years, and we cut to a shot of him, and he has like this long beard and this robe, and like, he hasn't been practicing walking after his injury, so he walks around on a cane. And it takes Catwoman, Selena Kyle, coming in and stealing something that belongs to him and kicking his cane out from underneath him, causing him to fall on the floor, which really sparks his interest in leaving his room and like going outside. So there's got to be this kick in the pants, man. Like there's got to be that moment where you're like, dude, maybe I am in my room too much, or maybe like I don't do enough. So that's a healthy thing to feel, you know? And I think the big benefit of travel is like understanding humanity, because it's very easy to sit back and be like, oh, the world's against me, like everything's so easy for everyone else, but like the clouds just rain on me all the time. And then you go around, you see how other people live, especially not in the United States, and you're just like, wow, man, like, not that I just come back from Japan, I'll use Japan as an example, not that Japan and its capitalism and democracy is such a hard place to live, it's really not, but you look at how different the social climate is and how much pressure there is to succeed, and the high suicide rate, and you're like, dude, maybe my slice of the world is a little bit easier. You know, it gives you perspective not only on that country, but in your situation. So I feel like that's, before people start talking about like, oh, the world should change, or I want to change the world, or this and that should change, it's like you should see that stuff first. And I still have a lot more to see. Like I have so much I want to see. I want to go to India. I want to go to Brazil. Like, there's just a ton of places I want to see. But yeah, that's I guess my piece on that is see stuff before you want it changed or before you're going to speak on it. Like,
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah. We're getting deep, dude. I didn't expect to get this deep.
I dig it. Like you can only talk about the weather for so long with people. You know, it's nice to have a conversation where it's like skirting, a little bit more depth. You know,
Yeah,
it's definitely fun.
Get us a little bit lighter though. You mentioned how there's a big shift in entrepreneurship here in the United States.
Yeah.
What do you think about that long term? Because I feel like our generation, nobody really has corporate career goals anymore. Like, everybody wants to be self-employed.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to be paid off of their own idea, which I think is a cool thing. What do you think about that shift, though? Because before you and I, man, like, I don't know, like, your dad's generation, but it's just like, dude, my dad, he's in the restaurant realty business, so that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. You know? Well, that's, you figure at this point, where there's two things I think that really come into play here, and one is social media, where you see someone who has become a freelancer and made that their work, or started a small startup or something like that, and it blew up. You have a lot more access to that kind of a career. You see people succeed and even fail, and you say, I could do that, or something along those lines. And then you also have a genuine, I don't want to say like distrust, but probably a better way to say it is a more
skepticism.
It's more people wanting to be happy and not just settling for I'm just going to work my 9 to 5 to the grave. People want a little bit more than that at this point, and want to go after it. And I think that means there's going to be you're going to have a lot of failures in that. And I think it's kind of like, and there, when is the bubble going to burst too? When are people going to go the other way and go back to the safety of their 9 to 5? But I love the idea of it. I think way too many people though think that, because they, sell, makeup online or something, that they're an entrepreneur. Like, it's like, I almost like kind of find the word entrepreneur at this point to be like a
very dirty word.
Yeah,
almost.
it's like, I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm thinking like, all right, bro, like, yeah, sure, like,
Yeah.
that's great, good for you. But I mean, when it works, and I think people need to understand that, like, you actually have to do something to be an entrepreneur. You have to start a business. You have to be doing your thing, and you can't just expect everything to go viral.
Totally. You're right. I think that social media provides a window into the lightning bolt kind of entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
For example, like people that are just a drop in the hat, like the Area 51 guy, these people who got circumstantially successful with like little work,
mm-hmm.
and they see that as kind of the medium to go after.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really just like a lot of the people who have like these crazy accounts and followings, like this is something that not only that they do as a hobby, but they've really sacrificed and went out on a limb by quitting their day job and allocating like all their hours towards
mm-hmm.
that. And it's like that stuff's never shown on Instagram. It's talked about. There's a lot of people, influencers, that talk about that, but to actually be there and see somebody dedicate pretty much entire weeks to just working on one thing, I feel like that's not really rampant in our generation right now. Like the work ethic's not really there. I feel like the idea is always there, but the work ethic and sacrifice is not there, man. So I see a lot of people trying to do their own thing, man. And you know what? Myself included, and I feel like I'm on at least the beginning first steps on the road to trying to do that. But it's daunting. I just think it's so funny because that's exactly what I was about to bring up, is like the word entrepreneur is thrown around so much these days that like it's lost its value.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And it has become like, because it's always the same kind of person as, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, and it's like, No, you're not. You're like doing nothing, and you're just it's almost a word of that just gives you clout. Like, you know,
Right.
it's just kind of like it's really become associated with that certain kind of uh it's almost a level of laziness of like
Right.
you don't know what you want to do, and so instead of just admitting that and finding things, you're kind of just screwing around and pretending that you have a job that doesn't mean anything. Oh, I started a failed startup, and it's like the guy, you know, selling cheese on a corner or something like that. You know, it's like
Yeah.
that's not a startup. You know what I
Right.
mean? You're not like crafting some kind of cheese and then like, you know, I don't know why I went for cheese as
No,
an
no, no.
example there,
I
but
get what you're saying. It's like some lemonade stand level business that you're conducting where
yeah,
it's just very circumstantial and temporary, and you're like, oh, dude, like it just phased out, man. It's like, well,
definitely,
you
yeah.
had no long term business plan,
I
so you
mean, on the other side of everything, one of the things I love about like people starting their businesses and stuff like that, and these smaller and the internet has really made this possible, is you have small businesses that are really devoted to quality. You know, whether they're making content, whether they're making goods, you know, or offering a service or whatever it is. You know, like you have people really, you know, like a woodworker, you know, someone like that who's taking their skill and making something of quality instead of going to IKEA, or when
right.
you buy your furniture at IKEA or something like that. I love that is a part of the entrepreneurial spirit that's kind of come out of, like, you know, the 2010s, I guess. And you have a lot of businesses that are like that are fighting the bigger corporate kind of, like, you know, cookie cutter product, and then really taking their passion and making it accessible to everybody. I think that's really cool, and I love that aspect of it. But I don't like the idea of everybody thinking that you know that they're one capable of doing that, and, like, you know, oh, I could start a startup because, you know, Johnny down the street sells furniture out of his garage, and but Johnny down the street has like maybe 15 years of woodworking experience, and
Right.
you just bought, you know, woodworking for dummies off at the library, you know, like.
Exactly.
So it's definitely, I think it has both sides, a positive and a negative, but I definitely feel like negative kind of outweighs the positive at some point.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a disillusioned view on that sort of lifestyle. And it leads me to think that this generation is going to be so weird when
Hmm.
it's old. And I know, like, that's not an original thought, like that's been said before, but you're going to have you have like a bunch of, I guess, what I would call rebels, or people who claim to be like really self-conscious, man, and they live this very conscious lifestyle, but they never really do anything. They just
Hmm.
kind of go by on the fact that they're like super ultra sensitive or whatever. And I feel like watching that age is going to be so interesting. Like, you ever think about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're like kind of just at the cusp of like a major change in like personality for everybody,
I think
and
about that too,
yeah,
man.
and like
Yeah.
and seeing that. So one, we're going to have like even you know, even more connected, you know, wired, you know, or I guess wireless, I don't know, um, generations coming up, you know, and there's already like marked differences between like millennials, and then was it millennial, then Gen X,
Gen X.
and
Yeah.
then like the kind of the people in between that too,
Hmm.
like the back end of being of the millennial and almost being a Gen Xer or whatever. And there's like huge difference. I love memes where it's like, you know, they break down like a Gen Z, millennial, Gen X kind of thing,
Yeah.
and it's like, you know, millennials are like, you know, making, you know, a joke about like not, you know, not being able to survive their, you know, doctor's appointment or something like that, and like and hating that, and then like, you know, Gen Z is like ready to, like, you know, actually do something about it, you know. And I love that there's one, millennials are self-aware enough to like make
Yeah.
jokes like this, but so we're going to have those people, the, you know, the joke about killing myself generation becoming old and actually being miserable,
Right.
it's like it's going to be really interesting when because everyone's like, oh, I'm 27, I feel old and I can't drink like I used to and everything like that.
it's
Once
this
they
whole
get old,
quarter life crisis thing going on.
yeah,
It's super weird.
it's like and it's super common, and I'm that's one of the things I'm looking forward to seeing about our generation. Our how the hell are we going to handle old age and all that stuff?
I don't think it's gonna be accepted. I feel like everybody is just gonna face tattoo and SoundCloud rapper their way into 100+ years, man. It's gonna be really weird. And there's going to be no previous generation to make fun of it anymore. So it's just going to be the accepted norm. I feel like you're going to just witness a bunch of 80-year-olds in 20+-year-old clothing. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah, it's I think a lot about at what point in your life do you kind of give up on, or not maybe give up on, but kind of reestablish what your dreams are,
You're talking about a reality check?
Yeah, a reality check, and I mean it doesn't happen that often anymore where people give up on on being a SoundCloud rapper. That's an example. Or I was saying earlier, I try to make sure that one, I can have my passions, and I'd love to be only to be a novelist, a songwriter, or whatever. But I also want my career because I don't want necessarily to be poor.
Right.
And
yeah, man.
but the idea of having to make that decision of okay, am I going to give up my dreams of doing this, of being this thing? It's at some point I think you have to, and that's something that I think a lot of people in this generation have a hard time with, because there's always that but I could do it. I could have that one little moment of virality that sets me off, and I'll be a Kardashian,
Right.
So it's one of those, the American dream changed, and I'm wondering, when do you give up on that dream,
That's very interesting. You said the American dream changed. That's cool. So I think you feel like the new American dream is to be famous, I guess.
Oh yeah, and instantly famous. It's not I want to, I want to be a musician, and so then I have to go through the steps of I have
the shows where nobody shows up.
Right.
One,
I have
manager.
Right. I have to start practicing, and then I have to go. I have to play live, then get a manager, and then there are steps. You got to pay your dues. And I don't no one wants that now. I was just just please make me viral on Instagram, and then
You know what it is, man? I think this is what I think the main problem is with that whole idea, where these people are trying to get instantly famous, is they don't know themselves. That's the thing. They don't know themselves, so they don't really even know what their dream is. They just see somebody else with something that they want.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's they don't even know the implications of getting that. And so I feel like there's a lot of soul searching that this generation has to do, man. And that sounds weird to say this generation has to do. I feel young people in general, myself included, the most powerful thing is to know yourself, so that you don't set an unrealistic dream,
Definitely.
And there's a serious lack of that, I guess, just because of social media, because we're so busy looking at other people. We're rarely ever looking at ourselves. We're trying to curate ourselves so that we match the energy of all these high profile people that we see online. We're trying to look presentable. We're trying to have content that people find fun and interesting, but there's too much comparison and looking at others instead of looking at perhaps a mirror and getting a more realistic image of okay, this is the talent that I have. This is what I'm capable of with the time I have. There's not really a lot of realistic measuring going on.
No, definitely
There's just a bunch of people that are dude, when I graduate college, I'm moving to LA, and things are going to get popping. It's that kind of talk that I hear.
And I love the idea of taking a risk and going after a dream.
I'm not saying that, yeah.
No, but I get what you're saying though. But at the same time, it's that you can move to LA and fail, and then at what point you just accept the failure, and that's what I think. Like you were saying, trying to know yourself and knowing your limits and knowing that okay, I failed, and I'm going to have to readjust, and that takes introspection. That takes knowing what your limits are, knowing what
Exactly.
you're capable of, and knowing, there's so many stories of people who failed at doing something and then kept going until they succeeded.
That's the classic story. I mean, that's the story that's in everyone's head, really.
Right, but it's also like, then at what point, do you change your game plan and adapt? And that's the other thing, and that's what I think we need a lot more of is adapting and learn. Like, because I did, I think when we first met, I was telling you about being a freelance writer, and I still do that to a certain extent, but I failed at that. Like, I did not manage to create a client base and do the things that I needed to do to make that a sustainable career. And so I had to readjust. I had to go back to like looking at trying to do office work, a regular paycheck, something like that. And I wound up now kind of being able to split the two and come out okay on the other end, but I had to readjust.
Right.
And I would never have been able to if I was just like, oh, I'm a great writer and that's all I focused on, and I'll get clients, I'd be like broke right now. You know what I mean? And I think that is really, really like scary thing about a lot of, one, seeing someone on social media who is successful and saying, oh, I can do that, I'll be that person too, and comparing yourself that way instead of actually taking a step back and saying, okay, I messed this up, need to change the game plan, instead of just, I'm going to keep going because they did it and now I can do it, because not everyone's the same that way,
Yeah, it's definitely a pride thing too. Like, I feel like when you are pursuing a particular lifestyle, you really have to set your ego aside and be like, all right, I live every moment of my life like everyone is watching on social media or Instagram, but like, you have to pretty much in your head be very stoic in the decision that I'm doing what I have to do to survive. Like, that's what it comes down to. There has to come a point where you just reject your public perception. And I feel like this generation is not good at doing that, and that's why there's not the regrouping that you were talking about.
Right.
It's like, I told everybody I was going to do this, so like, I'm going to do it. And the classic thing is like, tell me I won't do it. It's like, you may not be able to do it, man. It's just like, all right, then I'm going to do it. That stuff is the stuff that just drowns people. You really have to be in your soul quiet, knowing that I'm meant to do this. Almost like George Washington, I guess, where it's much deeper than this is what I want to do. It's like, this is what I was born to do, and I will find a way to do it. If I have to regroup, if I have to take some time to do office work, if I have to take some years to replan, like, then I'm going to do it.
Right.
It can't be this like totally unbalanced, full throttle, head forward way of just like smashing into things, because you're going to burn out.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like there's, people always talk about self-care, like mental health, self-care. It's like, not a lot of people listen to that or take that advice.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, and that's like the word burnout. Like, and you think of that as someone who you hear it a lot. Referencing a job that people aren't passionate about, and they get burned out at their job because they hate it. And it's like, you could also burn out trying to get your dream job, and then you're so worried about that you miss. It's like I was, for whatever reason, I've been thinking about this a whole lot, and this like kind of like I was saying, not giving up on your dream, but readjusting, adapting, and changing things. Like I always think about how many people have given up on some passion, and then lived a very happy, fulfilling life because they moved to that goal from like, okay, I want to be a famous pop singer, to like, I want to make my music, but then also maybe like have my family, or just like you can like readjust and make those goals smaller, or find happiness in things that are easily more attainable. And I think the other thing is, you need to have friends and family and people who are going to tell you like, hey, this isn't working. You need to fix this. Because when you look at online, and it's like, oh, anyone can do anything they want, and it's like, yeah, a lot of people can do anything, and I think that's a great thing. But at the same time, you need people in your life saying like, hey, not necessarily quit doing this, but you need to change the way you're thinking, you know.
Totally.
And you don't. It's very hard to find that people you trust, and who care about you enough and are honest enough with you to make you think that way.
Yeah, man. Seriously, like, tough conversations are key. You know, I had a tough conversation this week. Like, I had somebody come over and I'd had like a real issue that I talked to them about, and they gave me their honest opinion, and I didn't like what they had to say, but I knew they were right, you know? And I feel like that takes discipline to know. But I feel like what you're talking about in general is tempering your expectations.
Right.
You have a lot of expectations on how things are going to go, but you really don't know anything.
Oh, yeah.
And, you have to admit that. So the pop singer example, I'm going to do my music and have my family. Like, that's all you can really promise yourself, is that I'm going to make music. If it's great, if it catches on, cool. But the reason I'm going to make it is because I want to make it. Not because I'm trying to get famous. You know, like that, I feel like that's the poison that destroys a lot of people's art, whether it's writing, whether it's drawing, whether it's books. It's like, I'm going to make this so I can make money. Then you're probably not going to focus on making it the way it needs to be made. You should make it so that you really, really enjoy it and love it when you read it. Because then the chances are somebody else out there is going to love it and enjoy it just as much as you do.
Right.
So the focus has to be shifted. It's almost like, I'm not famous or anything like that, but I feel like all the people who are famous for what they do, they were trying not to be that way. You know, they were just very much like, this is what I love to do. I want to do this, and I want to do it all the time, and I don't care about anything else. And those are the people that ended up being famous.
Oh, yeah. Like, yeah, it's definitely, it's a matter of passion and like, and really devotion to something, with the, with the caveat of like learning a skill, honing your craft, or making it about that development of you, and less about the like, oh, I want to walk down the street and everyone wants to take my picture, or
that's
something
a weird
like that.
thing. We all want attention. Why is that?
We
want adoration. It's so strange how we associate that with a happy life.
And you always hear people, like, you hear about famous people who got famous and they reached that dream and then hated it,
Right, exactly.
Like,
and they wish they could go back. They're like, dude, I just want to be able to go to Dunkin' Donuts and get a freaking donut without 100 things happening to me on the way. Very
recently, I just saw a thing. I forget which celebrity. I think it was maybe Jerry Seinfeld or something. Said, like, they said, do you like being famous? Is it a problem? He said, no. He's like, I'm rich and popular, and it's great. And it's like, and that's cool too. But it's like, there's also
He's very
that,
unusual,
like,
man.
Yeah.
Did you hear what he said? Before you move on to your next point, you hear what he said when his kid was like, "Dad, are we rich?" His response was, "I am."
I did not hear that, but I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was. I don't. I'm pretty sure it was Jerry Seinfeld, or it might have been more than him. There might have been another famous person too. Said, I love fame. But but like, then you have these stories of people who got famous and then like went crazy because fame was like debilitating.
Yeah.
And like, being famous would be fun. Like, it'd be great. But at the same time, like, wouldn't it also just be great to like live a happy, fulfilling life,
Yeah, I think that's what people lose track of there.
And like you were saying, like, we need attention, we need adoration, we need that, and it's like, not everyone needs that. I'm definitely guilty of, like, oh man, I want that, like, a little bit.
Well, it's because I don't want to sidetrack you.
No,
You're creative. I feel like all creatives feel like that.
Oh yeah.
You put an effort to making something, and all you want is somebody to look at it and be like, "Oh, that's pretty cool."
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's like when I put my music on Instagram, and it's like, and it's not so much I need to get so many likes. It's like, man, I feel really good that people are enjoying this, and I see that, and it makes it really, the internet makes it really tangible. When you see those likes and stuff like that. Yeah.
It's so visual.
And it feels good, and it's reassuring, and like also just that you're doing something that's worthwhile.
Right.
But when that's your only metric for success, that's when it's scary. Like, that's when I think that gets like, oh crap, we need to really rethink what this means, kind of thing.
And why we're doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the scary part is the person who does nothing and then just wants attention. They have no skill, they have nothing to offer except maybe they look nice, and that's all they have.
Right.
That scares me about it.
Well, it's scary because that person exists. Like that's the Kim Kardashian, you know.
Yeah.
Like, that's the 100 whatever, you know. You can count on those people. So as long as those people continue to exist, that personality type is going to be duplicated.
Yeah.
And man, is it a toxic personality type? It's this entitlement, this crazy entitlement, and like as soon as you come in contact with it, you're like, ew, like, what is that? You
Yeah.
know? And I think it takes them being toxic to learn that that isn't a good way to be. But yeah, you see that a lot, especially today, man. It's a weird thing that I feel like our parents and their parents before them never really had to deal with that. Like,
well, and like this is another thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is and like you were mentioning generations and the kind of this difference of with the internet being almost a job for some people of just being a person on the internet.
Exactly.
And like there's also a massively, you know, like noticed like jump in anxiety, like
yes,
and because I have an anxiety issue, and it was like for a solid year I was having panic attacks and all kinds of stuff like that, and you know it took some time to get over that, and didn't do therapy or anything like that, but I did a lot of research on my own,
right.
and kind of found what worked best for me. And like finding out like the amount of people my age that have some kind of panic disorder or some kind of crazy anxiety is mind-boggling.
It's a lot.
And I think part of that is that, like, you know, and then so my grandparents' generation, one, they ignored what anxiety is, and like, you know, it's like kind of hidden away or whatever.
Like, what do you have? Some kind of fever?
Yeah. But then they also just handled things a lot better than I think my generation does. Like, I don't think, like, I think they handled things because they did not have that, like, you know, they could be happy and fulfilled a lot more easily because they did not have to compare themselves to a Kardashian, to wanting that kind of crazy success, and like literally smack dab in the middle of your Instagram feed is someone who is living your dream life. And it's a weird thing, I think, with careers nowadays where you have this kind of everyone wants that dream. Everyone wants to have that dream, and when we don't get it, it messes with people's heads, and you can't find that inner happiness. Whereas I think it was a lot easier for people.
Oh yeah.
You know, 30 years ago, even. You know,
there's less noise.
Definitely.
Know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's such a cool way to think about it. You know, and I feel that's what made people a little more wholesome. Like you hear about how, I don't know if your parents have stories like this, but you know, I used to hitchhike to school, stuff like that. Like I used to hitchhike to school. I used to go down the street and like walk into the neighbor's house, and they would have dinner ready for me and stuff like that. And that's all gone, right? The interpersonality has been sacrificed for the efficiency of electronic communication, meaning that the efficiency being that it's faster, more instantaneous, but now the interpersonality has been sacrificed. So the question is that a good thing? You know, because that's what leads to the anxiety, I think, because we are so disconnected from, I guess, real love or passion. I'm not saying that that's where your anxiety came from. That's a personal issue.
No, yeah.
But it's just like we feel alone.
Definitely.
You know?
And it's a double-edged sword because connectivity it provides us with some really incredible circumstances sometimes. Amazing, like I've been able to reach out to and make friends with people who live in different parts of the country.
Yeah, Reddit, dude.
And I love that. I love the fact that like I can make a friend online and you know it's a meaningful relationship at some point.
Cool, yeah.
And I think that is one of the coolest things in the world.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it can also be incredibly isolating. It can, you know, I can reach out to this friend, but like I may not ever meet this friend too, and so and there is definitely a hollowness to that relationship, even though maybe like there is a connection with someone there, but there's definitely a hollow thing too. And like I'm thinking of an episode of South Park where the internet runs out. And they go to California to find internet.
Oh no!
And Shelley Marsh has an online boyfriend, and they go to this same place to find internet and have to interact in real life. And they're like they don't want to talk to each other.
Right.
And then it's like, oh well, I am you when I get home or something like that. And then they're IMing and they're best friends again. But it only exists in this like internet realm. I thought that was funny. And I think it defines the way that can work sometimes, where like you make a friend on Twitter or something like that, or on Reddit, and then you meet that person in real life, and it's like, oh, this isn't a connection like I thought it would be, or whatever. And I think you need that. Like, I don't know. I like being in a room with someone, talking to them, and seeing their, the way they're interpreting what I'm saying or something like that, or just like giving someone a hug. That's that kind of like personal connection really can mean a lot.
Are they being attentive?
Right.
So
that
just
too.
Little
Yeah.
cues like that, man. There's a really interesting YouTube channel that you should check out. It's called Seymour. And this guy, I didn't even know you could do this until a few months ago. The Oculus Rift, like the
virtual reality.
VR. So there's this thing called VR Chat. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it. When you have the Oculus Rift, you can log into this free game called VR Chat, where you can chat with anybody around the world in an environment of your choice, using an avatar of your choice. It sounds like a Black Mirror premise.
Yeah, I was about to say, isn't that a Black Mirror episode?
Dude, I'm telling you, this is real. I'll show you a video later, or at least send you a link to one so you can watch it on your own. And what this guy does is he just kind of wanders around this VR chat, and he'll talk to people, and every YouTube video is a story of like their life. Like, it's just like, so like, tell me about you, like, where are you from and stuff like that. And dude, the stuff he records is incredible. I'm talking about he talks to this one dude that's a runaway, that's like, he escaped this town on the back of a train, and the guy that he was escaping with fell into the train and got chopped up.
Jeez.
To a dude who is part of the army in Korea and is just really sad about his life, to a guy who runs a church in VR chat where he virtually baptizes people. Like, it's amazing. It's amazing. And like, they're all in front of him, and the avatars are funny. Like, his avatar is Winnie the Pooh, but like, there's a Gundam avatar, like, you can pick whatever you want. And I'm just like, the fact that this is here and this is now and this is real is just so mind-blowing to me.
It's insanely cool.
Yeah.
I mean, like, but also insanely strange. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Well, that's the same thing. So there's what I was getting to is that exactly what you just described happens. There's an episode where he meets people from the VR chat in real life, and the dynamic is a little different. Like, they're still friendly, they still talk to each other, but like, you can tell that there's definitely a change in confidence presenting yourself in reality than when nobody can read your facial expression or anything like that. Like, there is a different way that you present yourself. And I feel like now that we have that little difference in our behavior, it just changes things. But please check out that channel.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, send me a
about.
link, please.
Dude, seriously, I went on like a watch binge of it. And by the way, it's 8:00, so I don't know if you got places to go, but
I don't have anywhere particular to be. I mean, whenever this is done, I'm good.
I'll probably close this out in like 15 minutes.
That works.
Yeah, it's just wild, man. And I think that is like the new form of exploring the world from your room, is like just that.
And I find it funny you mentioned confidence. Like, I am immensely not confident online.
Really?
I'm always like super nervous about posting things online and being online. Yeah. But then like I go up and I talk to strangers like all the time. Like I like in person, I feel like I'm a lot more confident.
That's interesting.
And online, I'm always a little bit like I feel unsure of myself, and it's funny.
Well, see, I'm the opposite way, even with texting people, because now I have more of a chance to curate what I'm saying, like to such a close specification, like down to the emoji, like how I want it to be. Whereas I feel like I'm often misconstrued in reality. Not that affects my confidence too much, but I have to say I am very confident, like when I'm typing or on the internet, like. It's almost like it's a different person for me. So congratulations for being the odd man out. That's a good way to be.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things I noticed. Like I'm like, oh man, like I'm always like second guessing a post or a text or something like that.
Yeah, and then are big, man.
Then like I am one of those people, like, I always see jokes about it, like, people getting nervous when someone calls them on the phone. Like I love to call people on the phone and actually have a conversation.
That,
and like I also like texting people, and I think that's a really convenient way to do things.
Sure.
But sometimes it's like, I'll call one of my friends just to like, oh, it's a Friday night, I'm home, like, oh, what are you up to? Like, what's going on? And just catch up a little bit and like actually hear someone's voice instead of just being text.
Yeah.
And I'm also a lot more confident on the phone talking to people than I am with text messages, because I'm constantly worried. Did that make sense? Like, did they get what I was trying to say, or did I kind of overshoot and say something? And I'm also I can be like really sarcastic sometimes too, and like it's hard for my humor to sometimes then like come across like that you write something in via text, and if the person doesn't know you very well, it can go like so bad, so bad.
Yeah, man, that's happened to me so many times, man, because I kind of joke like that too, and it's just it's that way. But yeah, we're straying further and further from that, and I'm just curious to see, like, will the next iteration of human beings even have that at all?
Well, I think there's already backlash to it. The digital world is that's why you have a TV series like Black Mirror, because it's preying on our fear of
it's the Twilight Zone of this generation.
Yeah, and we know, like it's funny because we know it's becoming a problem. We're seeing it.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, and I've read some things about like how younger kids, even though that they're exposed to like you see babies with iPads, basically like the mom hands toddler an iPad, and that keeps the kid entertained. So like we have like I didn't grow up with technology like that. Same. But I adapted it really well and everything else. And some of these younger people are rejecting it because they're ingrained in it so much, they've come to hate it. And then, like people my age couldn't put their phone down.
Yeah.
Whereas people like who might be like 18 years old, not that, I'm only 26, so it's not a huge age gap there, but you still have a genuine response to the digitalization of the modern world, like where people are looking for ways to turn off, to put the phone away for a little while. And I think it's harder for a lot of people, but I think within the next couple of years, you're going to see more backlash against it and more people trying to pursue. Yeah. At least I hope so too.
No, I think I see what you're saying. I feel like the consciousness of how destructive it is prevalent enough in like popular media, or just like the general social consensus, for enough people to step back and be like, all right, this is too much. Because I'm sure people that are on social media fasts and stuff like that. Like that is something that is a term, social media fast.
Right.
Try telling somebody about a social media fast in 2001. They'd be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But today it's very common. It's like, I just deactivated my Instagram.
Yeah, social media would have been, a friggin' brand new concept in 2001. People were like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
It's like the whole thing is also, it's all brand new. That's the other part, and like, because, they say technology expands exponentially. So like, I think about like being a little kid. And so that's within a quarter of a century, I went from like having a hard-lined, telephone to now having this little computer I can make calls on in my pocket at all times.
Right.
And that's a massive difference. That's hugely like, and now I think about like, at one point I went places, I did things, I had no phone. If I had to use a phone, I asked someone to, like a friend or, a payphone or something like that. Yeah. And, that's a very short time period to have that much of a change. I don't know how it'll change in the future. If it is exponential, and I mean, things are going to continue to get, they could get pretty nuts. But I hope that I have enough faith in humanity, and maybe it's totally misplaced.
No,
but like that, maybe we won't just become digital, ghosts.
I don't think we're gonna fully assimilate, but we're gonna get there. We're gonna get pretty close. It's just gonna become more effortless. But I think one of the virtues of our future society is gonna be like, this is like using a gun. There's a lot of responsibility behind it. Not to get like into gun control or anything, but like, this can be pretty destructive if you just full-fledged lean into it. But its power is to be used in minuscule, and that's what this effortless electronic communication is going to be. I'm talking about like you don't even have a display on your phone to look down at anymore. Like, you literally have a monocle that you put on, and that's it. Like, that's how you answer text. Like, when we get to that point, I feel like the general consensus is going to be like, okay, here's one, but dude, be super careful with this. And like, now you're old enough to have this, like, and I'm going to supervise you like that. I feel like it's not going to be, there's not going to be a sense of ease. It's still going to be like, all right, man, like, this is hard. This is pretty hardcore. Like, this is really going to pump some dopamine into you. Use this in moderation.
And that's funny you mentioned dopamine. Like, things are designed to be addictive at this point.
Down
and
to the colors of the likes. That whole red thing, like, that's just like, you're looking for that red on your page. Oh yeah, it's all white and blue. Like, you're looking for it.
It's the weirdest thing in the world that, like, that dopamine response from digital, interactions, social media, whatever. And then and like the responsibility too. And like I was saying, like the parent who just hands toddler iPad. And
what's your view on that?
I think, if the kid's just watching a TV show or whatever, like, okay, fine, whatever, that's not a big deal. But I think like you see, I was not allowed to have a cell phone until I was 13.
Same.
So like that was like that, and even then I had a limited, like I couldn't text, I could only use it for calls and stuff like that. So it was and so like and it like it sucked this, but at the same time, like I think that's a really good way to think about technology. Like you were saying, like there is power here, and this is something you have to use responsibly. And when the kid just is like, oh, here's your iPad, play Angry Birds for 6 hours, that I think is problematic.
Yeah, especially like, I feel like the context of using the iPad too, like if you're at a restaurant and the only thing that the parent does, and this isn't like damn many parents out there, is like when they get to the restaurant, the first thing to do is hand the kid the iPad. It's like, man, you're teaching your kid not to socialize or at least be attentive to other people at the table.
Yeah, definitely.
On how young they are,
And that's scary as hell, and it's also, it's like, and I'm not a parent, so like I have no idea how friggin' hard. I'm sure that's super hard.
Yeah.
But like I like what you were saying though about the knowing and understanding the responsibility there, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about.
No.
Is that there is, and you're seeing it a lot with kids saying stuff online. Oh yeah. And then
the whole cyberbullying thing,
and you could ruin lives. And it almost seems like a fake thing because it is digital. It doesn't have real life ramifications.
Yeah.
So it is funny that, like, just the way you said responsibility with that, and that's I think that's something that we really do need to address from not even just with kids, but like with ourselves.
Yeah.
But
totally.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, to see cybernetic actions as having the same weight as ones that are executed in reality. It's 8:18, man, and I think we should wrap up. We've been talking our faces off.
Yeah, I had no idea of the time, to be honest. A little time warp. Good conversation,
Everybody who's on the show, like I always tell them, we've been talking for 2 hours. They're always just like, "Whoa, it's been like 2 hours." I've had a 4-hour podcast one time. I was like,
"Wow."
Yeah. So, but that one we were talking about specific like televised events. But it's time always flies when you're running through things in your head. But I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. I'm not sure if you have an Instagram or website for your poetry and music, but if you want to plug that so people can listen to it or have time to, if not, that's totally cool. But I just leave that open.
I'd have to remember my @. I don't even remember at this point. It's at Original Edek or something.
Account, I actually have it written down.
You can tell I really take a lot of time to make sure my social media. I don't even remember like my links and stuff.
Original Edek, that's you, right?
Original Edek, yeah.
So if you want to check out my boy Ed's songs, you go to original_EDDECK on Instagram, and he plays music, and it's just all around really creative and cool guy, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I hope to have you on again sometime.
I'd love to.
All right, this has been episode 71 of Andrewcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Peace.